This isn't a book review, so please keep watching. What if I told you that over 100 years ago, E.M. Forster described a world in which humans were utterly dependent on technology, addicted to technology, isolated by technology, that we experienced and interacted with the outside world via handheld devices and video links? What if I said that this world also described humans as spending a lot of their time watching people in, I suppose, an equivalent of a live stream, talking about the same topics again and again and again? Does that sound familiar? And I'm not just talking about me talking on this YouTube channel, even though I am recycling some old boat footage again. That opening description of the world of the machine stops might make it sound like it's perfectly predicted the modern world. Yet the reality is that it's predicted the human interaction, the human dependency on technology and addiction, but the actual technology itself is almost the exact opposite of what we have today. And yet Forster reached the same conclusion, or at least an accurate assumption of how humans would interact with an all-consuming technology that would do everything for us. In The Machine Stops, humans are isolated very physically. Everybody has their own individual room, which there's no reason to ever really leave. And in that room, you're surrounded by buttons and devices that, at a moment's notice, can serve your every need. Whereas today, technology has been miniaturized into a smartphone, a handheld device that we can put in our pocket and take around in the actual outside world. Yet so much of the themes of The Machine Stops seem very familiar. And I suppose the idea of isolation being a physical thing in The Machine Stops versus a mental thing in the real world isn't much of a distinction. That may seem like a ludicrous statement to make, but just consider this. As a really big example of a huge group of people, consider that we've probably all seen footage of crowds at concerts or crowds at events like New Year's parties, where everybody might be there together as a group, until you look a little deeper and see how many people are there holding their phones up, filming the exact same scene from a slightly different angle as sometimes literally thousands of other people are. And rather than that group of people being one mass, it's just a series of isolated individuals that happen to be standing next to each other, all experiencing the world through that little screen in the palm of their hands. You can see this loneliness and isolation in other places. If you look in canteens and waiting rooms, or maybe even your own dining table sometimes, that it's a series of individuals all locked into their own experience of somewhere far away on that phone screen, which has got no bearing on the people around them, and the people around them equally have no bearing on them. When thought of in these terms, you can see how perhaps the physical isolation is not such a big difference. More significantly, in my opinion, there's a fascinating concept that because the people of The Machine Stops are completely dependent on viewing things via screens and hearing other people talk about them and tell them what these experiences and places are like, it totally devalues first-hand experience. Once again, we can go back to a vision of a group of people at something like a New Year's party, all holding their phones up, recording near identical footage, even though they know there's dozens of other versions of that they can see if they really want to relive that moment again for whatever reason. But still, instead of being there in the moment, even though they're physically present at the location, they're still viewing it secondhand through a screen. And these are fascinating concepts for somebody to be talking about over 100 years ago. The devaluing of first-hand experience doesn't happen in a vacuum. In the book, they value and appreciate second, third, and fourth-hand experience more and more, and they almost have a twisted version of how we would say standing on the shoulders of giants lets us see that little bit further, and that we're building on previous technologies and previous generations' expertise to make better things. They view it almost in the opposite way. This is also something that feels unnervingly relevant to today, Whereas we, once upon a time at least, like to think that we had the best information and the best sources, eyewitnesses, and so on. They pride more and more human interpretation and input and analysis. So every generation that passes gives their input and analysis based on the previous generations, which of course is further and further diluting the truth and taking you ever away and further from whatever the original events were. And it just to me feels incredibly similar to how information can spread now on things like Twitter and so on, where there can be, let's say, information that might not be accurate rapidly spread around, which then, even if you don't realise it, might just settle at the back of your mind and just colour your opinion on something going forwards, that you'll then pull up that memory or that bit of information that you might not even have fully realised when or where you learnt it, and then use that for your own opinion and analysis. I'm going to leave you now with a direct quote from the book, and you can judge for yourself how relevant and modern this does or does not sound. Until the next time, my friends, have a wonderful day, but just listen to this. We created the machine to do our will, but we cannot make it do our will now. It has robbed us of the sense of space and of the sense of touch. It has blurred every human relation and narrowed down love to a carnal act. It has paralysed our bodies and our wills, and now it compels us to worship it.